Thank you for joining us at Toy Fair University. Up now we have From Recovery to Resilience, How Mesh is Shaping the Future of Play. Our moderator is Rachele Harmuth. Rachel?
Thank you so much. Okay, I want to start out by just kind of level setting on some basic questions. So who here has a child in their life, whether it's your own child or a niece or a nephew or a neighbor or best friend's kiddo who's important to them? Who's got a kiddo in their life who's important to them? Okay, keep your hands up. For everyone who has a kiddo in their life who's important to them, how many of you in the last 12 months have worried at some point about that child's mental, emotional, or social health? Okay, not a single hand goes down. So this is what we've learned by digging into the research around mental, emotional, social health in our kids. When we go out and we talk to parents and caregivers, what we find is when we say, if you could gift one thing to those kiddos who are super important to you in your life, if you could gift one thing, you would think, you guys, that the answer would be success or happiness or financial freedom or all the things that are those big things we talk about. But when we really dig into it, the number one thing that we wish for, that we want to give our kids, is resilience. And that's the aspect that we're here to talk about today. How do we become a part of building resilience for the kids who are important to us in our lives? So we're going to start just digging into kind of what's happening. So as you see, everyone around you, everyone's hands stayed up, right? This is the number one issue for parents and caregivers right now, not only actually in the US, but worldwide. And it's because there's a lot of stuff happening, you guys. As we look at the research, when we first started doing this research, it was right after the pandemic had hit. And we kind of assumed it was about the pandemic, right? Like our whole lives were disrupted, our kids' lives were disrupted, and we thought, oh, this is really what's happening because of right now. And what we found out, digging into the research from the NIH and the Pew Foundation and the Surgeon General, is that this actually had been happening and bubbling up for years prior. And what the pandemic did is kind of just lit it all on fire and brought it to a head so we saw it. But with that, we understand that it's not going to just go away, and it's actually growing. And so as you look at some of the statistics that we see happening, right, 40% of high school students reporting sadness, right? We were looking at reports down to like 5-year-olds and a 24% increase in ER visits that were mental health related for 5-year-olds, right? And we knew we needed to do something. We knew we needed to figure out, how do we, as the toy industry, make an impact? Because outside of educators and parents, we have the biggest opportunity to impact kids' experiences and kids' development. So this is the coolest part of the research, actually done by studies. The biggest one for us that we read was one from Harvard that really dug into resilience. And what it says is that resilience is not a trait. It's not something you're just born with. Resilience is a set of skills. And we were like, oh gosh, this is so great, because if it's a set of skills, that means it's teachable, right? And again, we create the tools that every child uses every day. So if we can understand what those skills are, we can develop products that intentionally build those skills. And that's when Mesh was really brought to the toy industry, and Mesh Helps, the nonprofit, was formed. So we identified from the research the 8 skills that develop resilience for kids. And we started coming to the industry and talking to the industry about what that means and what that looks like. And I'm so excited today to have these amazing panelists up here with me who come from all different areas, in all different aspects, who are helping us understand what is the impact of what's happening and what can we do as our industry, as the people who create products for kids to have the greatest impact overall. So I got you want to meet the panel. Super excited. If you guys will each take a moment and introduce yourself and where you come from and why this is so important to you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Talia Filippelli. I'm the founder of North Starr Studio and the creator of Spark. What I do is I help toy companies operationalize the mental health benefits that are already inherent in their toys and truly all toys. The trick is really about translating those mental health benefits into language and tools that are usable, really taking the on-the-box promise and fulfilling that in the box by building a parental understanding and caretaker understanding of how to build resiliency skills through the play experience using those amazing toys. That's what I do, and I have 2 kids, so obviously this is very important to me.
That's great. Hi, everyone. I'm Habib. I'm the founder of the Calm Caterpillar. We actually make toys and tools all designed to teach kids how to use mindfulness to change the way they feel. When we think about resilience building, we talk about executive function and how coping strategies are so important to kids today. I have a 5-year-old, and when she melts down and then learns how to use a coping strategy to really change the way she feels, that's a skill that's going to serve her for the rest of her life. All of our toys teach kids those skills, reinforce them, and enable both parents and educators to begin to allow the child to use those skills on their own.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonina Llull, and I am an occupational therapist. I'm the founder of Play to Do and also Empower Me. Under Empower Me, that's where my clinical practice reigns, so to speak. And under Play to Do, I love working with toy, game, material creators to really emphasize the developmental aspect of the product so that we can share with parents, other educators, other therapists, schools, after-school programs, what the benefit of the product is and that it merits the space and the budget for getting them.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. So what we wanted to do is really break this into 2 specific questions to understand how we're seeing the youth mental health crisis affect children and families. And then once we've done that, we'll talk about what we can do in all different aspects of the industry to impact it, affect it, and help develop resilience in our kids. So we'll start out just saying, okay, so how are you guys seeing what's happening manifest in all the different areas that you guys work?
I guess I'll jump in. So one of the things that I do is I'm a clinician. So I'm working with children and families and parents every single day in a therapeutic setting. And beyond the child's mental health crisis, which a lot of people think of as an increase in anxiety, and that's true. There is an increase in anxiety across the cohort of our youth population. However, together with that, there is a deficit of skill-building opportunities. And so what we end up seeing and what parents feel really worried about is persistence, right? How do we help our child, persist through a moment where, as the kids would call it, they might rage quit because they're frustrated? We're looking for ways to build those skills. And the truth is, resilience is not guaranteed. And all toys have this potential, but the mechanics behind building resiliency skills really matters to parents. They know, resilience is everywhere. Parents know how critical it is for their kids to build these skills for their futures. And so what we're seeing is that kids are not getting a lot of reps. Resilience skills have to be scaffolded. There needs to be guidance to help a child actually acquire and master skills in resilience. It's just not going to happen on its own. So parents that I work with are craving some sort of cheat sheet. They're craving information. They're craving those sort of in-the-moment little scripts to know what to do so they're not tongue-tied. That's a lot of what I'm seeing, just parents super craving this support.
I love that you mentioned reps. I'm not sure if people here are familiar with the motor learning theory model, but it tells us you need 1,000 repetitions for something to become cognitive. So when we talk about building resilience, it's not a one and done, right? So it really is how many opportunities can we give kids? And when we think about how this mental health crisis is affecting children and families, we also have to talk about schools. Who here has ever been asked to calm down? Raise your hand if you've been ever asked to calm down. And did it make you feel better? No. So when we think about the mental health crisis, I think about teachers and I think about parents. So often they're all using the phrase, I need you to calm down right now. But in reality, the exact opposite happens. So a lot of times I like to talk about modeling behavior and creating an environment. And educators, just like families, they need a new set of skills. They're seeing behaviors they've never seen before. Who here has ever heard a teacher or a parent say, wow, I'm seeing behaviors I've never seen before? Because I hear it every day. And so it's really important to begin to recognize also what's outside the four walls of a classroom. It's someone's home. And so how do we begin to build this bridge between what's happening in a classroom and what's happening at home? And when we think about how those two areas and those two groups of people could begin to work from a common set of skills, I think that's how we think about changing what's going on in the mental health crisis. We have to think about both spaces. It's really important to do that.
Absolutely agree. I'd like to talk about this in terms more directly about the kids, because something happened. I was going to start with a different example, but something happened the other day before I flew in. And I was in a micro school. I was with 7 children who were typically developing, no diagnosis. And I was showing them a new game that we were going to play. And they were all very excited to be there, ready to get started. But with 7 kids in 7 minutes, and I kid you not, it was mayhem, because they all wanted to engage, they all wanted to play. However, they did not know how to work together. They did not have frustration tolerance. You had 1 or 2 kids over here hoarding everything and being quite aggressive about hoarding everything and using everything themselves. You had 1 child who didn't know how to start with a particular partner, and they ended up crying in the corner. And then you have 2 kids trying to meet the brief of the assignment, because we are in a school setting, and they have no idea how to do the assignment as given, because they can't interact with the person in the corner and the person hitting, right? And I was in that moment where, wow, this just completely turned around with smiling, respectful, happy kids who introduced themselves to something that was mayhem, okay? I am seeing huge reactions and very hard recovery period. And this is alarming to parents, caregivers, teachers, other therapists. It's an alarming thing to see that flip of a switch and that inability to recover on their own. It's everyday stressors that are causing huge reactions.
So I would love to jump, because this was one of the most interesting things. I've been working in toy manufacturing for the last 30 years. And you guys, for 30 years, we've been talking about like gross motor skills and fine motor skills, and that's all we talk about. And they have that sort of like soft skills that no one defines. And so I think one of the hardest things when we were first looking at this research and trying to understand how we have an impact is that we had no definition of what these skills are. And so much of what we were doing in the research was just defining the skills to give ourselves a vocabulary so we could say, okay, problem solving, really important. Perseverance, really important. Like, these are the skills, if we identify them, then we can develop to them. And the other piece that I think you brought up really well is this idea that mental distress affects every child. We're not talking about a diagnosis or mental health issue, like, you know, the 1 in 5 kids who have a diagnosis. We're talking about every single kiddo. And when you think about what it means to build resilience, it can be big things. A grandparent passes away, a parent deploys, a pet passes away. Like, those are big things. But it also can be something as simple as, Lauren and I are best friends, and we sit together in English class, and then one day we come into class and they rearrange the chairs, and now I have to sit next to Mary, and I don't know Mary, right? And this creates mental distress. And so we're looking at those everyday experiences where we want kids to have the skills. And so by understanding it affects every child and helping to identify the skills in a way that we can show and develop products towards that, or understand that a lot of the products we've already created develop those skills. We just haven't identified that and called that out to give parents that cheat sheet, to give parents the understanding of, okay, if I'm playing this game with my kiddo and they're getting frustrated, that's okay. How do I have the words to help coach them to understand and learn from it instead of just put it away because I'm, rage
quitting.
Rage quitting?
Yeah.
Rage quitting.
And I want to just tag off that for a second, because what we're talking about is this idea of the kids' mental health crisis. But there's another thing going on simultaneously, which has been very well researched and published, which is the parental burnout crisis that's happening simultaneously. And that's been published, I think it was Dr. Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General, published Parents Under Pressure in August of 2024, really outlining what's going on with parents and elevating it to this crisis level so that people like us can do something about it. Because when we talk about scaffolding those skills, who's scaffolding? Burnt out parents? Guess what burnt out parents don't need? They don't need a textbook. They don't need something long form. They really need a cheat sheet. They need these like co-play scripts, some one-liners. We need to be able to give them these little bursts so that they can support their kid in that moment. So it goes from, rage quitting, and we prevent a rage quit, and instead we build persistence in that very moment.
Not only parents are burnout, but educators are as well, right? We all know teachers do not need us to add one more thing to their plate. I'm going to talk about my own products because might as well in this moment. I think one of the reasons we're successful is because not only are we teaching a child to use a breathing technique in the moment, but the person doing it with them is also doing the breathing technique. I talk all the time about when we're teaching flower and candle. This is a fidget tool. It teaches flower and candle breathing. When you're the parent or you're the educator doing it with the kid, guess what? You just took a deep breath too. And we all know that when we take a deep breath and we tell our vagus nerve to stop producing cortisol, that things are going to change inside our body. And so when we think about building these tools and toys not only to affect the child, but the person using it with them, it has an exponential wellness effect.
I'd like to jump on that too. One of the things that ended up happening a little bit by accident years ago and brought me to this space is because a parent called me in distress in a toy store. In distress in a toy store. I'm glad I picked up on the weekend, and I ended up having to meet her there and help her calm herself because she did not know what to do, what to buy, what to add. She was in high stress herself, okay? And so I went with her. We did what we needed to do to regulate, and we went through the store and we started to shop together. So a lot of times I am helping parents and teachers, other therapists, learn what to shop for so that they always have the tools that they need. Parents, sometimes I end up in parents' homes, and it is not for lack of trying or lack of product. They have a lot of product, but it's just not usable, and they feel even less worthy and less capable and so much distress themselves because this was supposed to work and it didn't, and I don't know what to do about it.
So this is a great then step into our second question, which really talks about what we in the toy industry can do to make a difference. And I'd love to jump in really quick. So when we first started Mesh Helps, and we were talking about the research and the ideas and the 8 skills we had identified. And I I've been in the industry for 30 years. I was like, oh, we have the 8 skills now. I'll go into a toy store and I can pick out the products that build those skills. And I literally did this, you guys. I walked into a toy store and I was all, I have the whole idea now. And I stood there going, okay, self-advocacy. I'm going to pick products that develop self-advocacy. And I'm also a mom of 3. And I felt like I had all the marbles, right? I got this. And I stood there like an idiot for 20 minutes going, I have no idea what's building self-advocacy. Again, I can tell you gross motor skills and fine motor skills, but when you get into these details of these specific types of skills we're trying to build, that's where I didn't know. And that's actually when we created the MESH accreditation for product, which was the biggest request we had, was to help manufacturers be able to express to parents a product that builds these skills. And that's where the accreditation program came from, right? And we're just in the infancy of that right now and developing that. We have 300 products out there now. But it's an exciting piece to sort of see the possibility of how do we communicate that? How do we make the difference? And I think from each of your different perspectives, can you help us see what are the ways that as toy manufacturers, as the toy industry, we can really make this a positive change for children, for families, for parents, so they're not falling apart trying to figure out how to help their kids and not knowing what to do.
Sure, I can jump in here. So I want to talk about the pediatric mental health industry. It's $59 billion last year. Huge industry. That's what parents are spending on pediatric mental health because there is a crisis in kids' mental health. Well, let's take a school, for example. On average, one guidance counselor serves 364 students. Do you think that guidance counselor is able to serve those students effectively? No. So why would a school not spend $16.99 and put in a flower and candle breathing tool into every classroom when a guidance counselor can't be in there? First of all, they do. They buy hundreds of these to help aid guidance counselors do their work. I bring that up to say the toy industry has this massive opportunity to not only do well, but to do good. Because it's so important for kids, parents, educators to have access to toys that build self-advocacy, resilience, right? They need real opportunities to have toys that build these skills, and we know the industry is there for it. Parents are looking at whether or not a toy is going to add value to their child's life before making that purchasing decision more than they ever have before. Parents are spending the money, we see it, so clearly we need to increase the number of toys that we are making that are going to serve this need. I think about there's 8 amazing skills that MESH mentions. How many people out here today can they say, this is how my toy relates to that skill? And it's really important that as an industry, we begin to think about how we can help change the mental health crisis going on with our children today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump off that because there's many opportunities. The toy industry, I think, is really uniquely positioned because the toy and play experience is a scrimmage for life. This is a practice environment where children get to experience the full range of emotions that we all experience in our normal everyday lives, but they get to experience it in this sort of experimental, fun, dynamic environment. And if we can utilize that opportunity to really bolster the skill building, then we're not only just saying on the box that this toy builds confidence, we're really teaching the mechanisms of how to get there. So, the toy industry, I think, is and has always been this incredible place for children and parents to go, not just for memory building and practicing skills, but for fun and bonding and all of that. So I think that if we can sort of pull together resources and figure out a way to position both packaging and in the box type of resources, guidance for parents, we're really differentiating. Because at this point, it feels like a lot of companies have leaned into the mental health aspect with building confidence or teaching a certain skill, but I don't know that all toys are really delivering that promise inside the box. And that's where you really speak to parents. That feels like a huge opportunity here so that the toy isn't like letting parents down in that moment when we buy a toy and we're so hoping that our child is going to build some confidence from using that toy. And many of these toys fall flat on delivering that promise. So we can really amplify messaging by helping make that promise and keep that promise to parents and buyers.
And start with the goal principally, not when you have the robust prototype and that you're going to do a focus group at that point. Start with the intention. I think that's the critical point. And what's amazing is that all types of play, so therefore all types of products, can build all the subset skills that build resilience. So whether if your passion is designing things that children can play individually or solo play, whether you want to do partner play, whether your products, you want to design for products that do group play, it's there. When you're playing independently, or what I call solo play, you're building persistence. You have a child who has to build their intention to keep going because they don't have someone there quickly providing recovery for them. You have partner play that allows people in real time to adjust their roles and adjust how they're communicating. And you have group play that, for me, what's so important about it is that you build that sense of belonging, and feeling belonging is extremely protective and allows kids to come back even though they've had a conflict with someone. It allows them to re-engage in that group, that community, because of that protective nature of building belonging. And so that's the amazing part, is that we can build resilience when we have intention and how we're intentionally guiding kids, parents, teachers.
That's great. I want to talk about resilience building, something you just mentioned. Just losing. Let's talk about losing for a second. So I think so many kids really struggle to lose. I see this in my own home. I've seen like a deck of cards go flying, right? And losing is hard as a kid or as an adult. But what are we doing to support parents when they're buying board games or any sort of game where there is a winner, in how to handle that loss? I mean, I feel like I'm 36, I have a 5-year-old. I feel like my parents would be like, back in my day, like, kids didn't lose like this. Why is it changing, right? There is something different about kids today. So one, I think we got to accept that. But two, it is, what are we going to do to support them? Is it something we're putting in boxes that helps remind parents how to prevent rage quitting? Is it little stickers that just go on a box, or a little leaflet that's in there? What else can we do across all the different brands here, all the different types of games, to give these little tidbits, for the 15% of parents that read it and maybe they get to keep playing the game, we've just had a positive impact, right? So I think there's so many other things like that. Like, what else can we begin to think about where we can really help a family navigate a challenge we know is going to come from a toy? I mean, has anybody here ever not played a game with their kids because they know there's going to be a winner and loser? Right? And so I have definitely done that. And we should help solve that problem.
Well, and I think a lot of when we have products that go through the mesh accreditation process, we have an amazing third party that does the accreditation process for us, which is Fundamentally Children. And who hasn't heard of Dr. Amanda Gummer? She's awesome, because this is exactly what she's trying to help with. And so we've learned that so many products build these skills, but because we don't call them out, or we don't lean in to make that part of the experience in a way to help parents understand. So sometimes it's as simple as saying, like, hey, in the back of the instruction book, put in a 1-page parent's guide, 3 tips to get the most from this play experience. Or, hey, you've provided these amazing storytelling, plush characters. Put a prompt in that encourages the development of that storytelling element versus just a caretaking element, things like that, which I think we've found that it's not about radically changing everything you've done, but it's about making sure that you are encouraging and teaching how to use it to the greatest skill development possible.
I want to add to that, just that this is an opportunity that's available to all toy brands, big, small. You could have just started 5 minutes ago, or you can be a legacy brand. The lift in order to add something like this to your product can be small, like Rachel's talking, something that maybe goes on the back of the instructions, to something that might be bigger and more intentionally designing the actual product. So like the range of ways that the toy industry can jump in the pool and start participating in this is vast, right? Just approach us. We have ideas for ways to get this into your product that are both low lift as well as up through adjusting product design.
So I'd love to touch base on one point, because again, we're a business, guys, right? And so as much as what we talk about here is how we can intentionally be building skills and the impact that has on kids, and I know we all feel really good about that, but where's the money, right? Like, where's the business element of how you go inside your company and say, hey, I think we should spend a little more time looking at how we intentionally build this skill, or hey, I think we should add this element to our product that just goes one step farther or is a benefit for the parents. So I'd love, actually, Sarah, I know you have very specific experience on the marketplace that can be opened up when you're doing this, and it allows you to have the conversation internally of like, and then it increases our sales potential by X. So would you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I mean, my company is solely focused on building resilient skills, and we believe that this opportunity is really specific around two different areas. One, I'm going to talk about fidgets. Fidget is a huge industry in itself, and if you think about the opportunity there, how can you make your fidgets do more than just fidget? How can you make them add a skill? Do you mind holding the microphone for me for 1 second? I'm just going to talk like this for a second. So we wanted to teach flower and candle breath. You smell the flower, you blow out the candle. It's a fidget, but then we said, let's add a very specific skill to it. And for us, the reasoning behind that, you know, we did product testing, but we just launched this toy one day. And people were like, what is that? Like, there's so much, I think, education still required, but at the same time, the market opportunity is huge. We were able to put this product on Amazon beyond our other retailers and places we're selling it. And what's interesting is it's not necessarily being labeled by parents who are buying it as a mesh tool. They think of it as just this thing that might help their kid. And so sometimes I think people get stuck up on the label, or that they think it's for a kid with a diagnosis, when we know that actually these products are for all. So I feel like sometimes people want to shrink their market size and think these tools are just for kids with diagnoses. They're not. They're for every kid, neurotypical, neurodivergent. And then I think they think that it's going to maybe that association with, you know, neurodivergent, which, you know, make somebody not buy the product. And that's just not true, right? And when you put up a fidget tool on Amazon, or you're selling it in Barnes & Noble or wherever, those people want to buy it because guess what? Meltdowns are happening every day. And so the most people that have stopped by our booth in the last 2 days, they're all parents, right? Because parents are who you're selling this to, and parents need help. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Rachel, but I've tried. I did my best there.
I'd like to add on there. What I'm seeing is that there is a huge appetite in public school, but also private schools, for bringing in products that help the teachers do their job, help the kids, easily aligned with standards. They want to bring in the materials that are going to be useful and worth their retail space and storage and worth their budget. There are a lot of grants that teachers and schools and district leaders can apply for and to pay for these type of products. Right now, school choice and school empowerment, regardless of what state you're in, is really big. Parents are choosing where they bring their kids. They are picking the schools they want to be at. They're starting homeschool co-ops, micro schools, their own charter schools, because what's happening in public school isn't meeting their needs at this time, right? And that is a big opportunity for the toy industry to move into the educational space, not because they're an ed tech product, but because they are supporting children and their caregivers at that time for a vast majority of the day. And then working through bridging what's happening at school to what's happening at home, because parents are creating their own bridges. If you look at the statistics, and I don't have it in front of me, parent choice and empowerment scholarships are big.
So this is really interesting too, because again, I think there's a massive market in the education sector for sure. But also when we did the research from the very beginning, again, at this point I was at Think Fun and we were just doing basic research about our product in the market, out talking to retailers. We started talking to specialty retailers, and every single one of them said, oh, no, the conversation isn't about STEM. The conversation isn't about academic success. And we're like, what is the conversation? And every single one said, every parent is coming in going, look, I don't care if my kid goes on to Princeton. I just want them to be okay. And it was about mental health, and it was about helping their kids, every single retailer. So we thought, okay, this is a specialty retail thing. This is where parents are coming to their specialty retailers. That must be it. And then we started talking about this wider and wider, and Amazon came to us and said, oh my God, this is a conversation that we know our consumers are having. And they actually came on as the first fiscal sponsor for Mesh Helps for the nonprofit, was Amazon. And we went, whoa. First of all, we went, oh my God, right. But we were like, this is bigger than just the idea of specialty or of the parents who are going that extra mile. This is everyone. And so the market opportunity is bigger than where you're at normally. It's bigger than specialty. It's in education, but it's also across places like Amazon where they're seeing this need so much. Yeah.
And Rachel, I think we'd be remiss not to mention Dr. Becky. Do people here who know Dr. Becky is? And Big Little Feelings. So if we think about this industry for parents, millennial parents, I'm a millennial parent. Millennial parents follow Dr. Becky and they follow Big Little Feelings. I think between the two of them, they probably have 4 million followers on Instagram. Big Little Feelings, they came out with their own toy line. Dr. Becky is doing products. And so when we think about the scope, all of those products relate back to these mesh skills. And so I think there's also a big shift in parenting. Yeah. Parents are overwhelmed by the amount of information that they have to absorb, but we do have to talk about there's been a big shift in parenting, and that's why parents want these toys now.
For sure. We just have a couple minutes left. I'm going to throw up on the screen really quick. So Mesh Helps, which is the nonprofit that really sort of brought this to the industry, is trying to lead and have this conversation happen all throughout. We do have 2 white papers. If you have an interest in digging more into the research that was the foundation for this, we welcome you to come engage with us, read the white papers, and join us online. We just have a couple minutes left. Do each of you want to just take a minute and just sum up what is the most important thing you want the folks here to understand or to implement or to go out into the world with around mesh?
Sure. I think really the whole message here is that we're not trying to make toys, therapy, or make every single thing into a therapeutic something. What we're trying to do is take these small windows, these moments of opportunity, and make sure that we are backing parents so that they don't miss that moment to teach what we've promised on the box. That would be my biggest message for today.
That was beautifully said. For me, it's really around how can we equip both children, parents, and educators with the skills to manage their feelings. Come see us at booth 6411 downstairs.
Absolutely. For me, it's about reiterating that how we guide children, their parents, and all the caregivers in their lives is critical, and it actually has an impact short-term and long-term. So when we help design toys, games, materials that really intentionally build the skills that support resilience, we are having a huge impact on our small community, but also as a whole world, really.
And so for me, I think to sum up the last 40 minutes, it comes down to this, you guys. Resilience is what every one of us wants for our kids. Resilience is not a trait. Resilience is buildable. Resilience is a set of skills. And again, outside of educators and parents, we as the toy industry, whether you're in design or marketing or licensing or sales or inventing, we are the ones who can have the greatest impact on giving parents and giving kids the experiences that build those skills, that build resilience. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You guys
Thanks.
so much for being here.